Hi everyone, welcome to week 6. We're going to spend week 6 and week 7 thinking about the US Department of State and some careers that are available to you, some opportunities that are available to you there. This is our book that we're going to read here, America's Other Army, and it's again going to be about becoming a diplomat. Right? This, as always, right? The disclaimer is I recognize that maybe not everybody is interested in doing this, but I know that some of you will be will be interested in it, and many others of you should have a look and check it out as a possibility, and have a look at what it might entail. So I'm going to start here on the website here of the U.S. Department of State, just talking a little bit about a Foreign Service Officer, what that involves, who they're looking for. And I'm going to start here really with the career tracks, because this is going to form the bulk of your assignment this week. We're going to be reading from this America's Other Army book, and we're going to choose one of these career tracks and kind of track back, talk about what sort of qualities a person might have, what sort of interests a person might have who would want to work in one of these tracks, and then kind of track that back to the mission of the Foreign Service, and try and decide how do people in this track use their skills and their experience and how do they harness their interest and their impetus in order to fulfill the mission of the Foreign Service. And so on the website you can see this. I definitely advise you to go on here and check it out. It'd be good supplemental information to the book. But you see there you've got the 5 different tracks. You've got the consular officers, who are the ones who are responsible for evacuating Americans, for facilitating adoptions, for deciding visa distribution, right, in some countries. You've got economic officers who are interested in promoting trade, economic relationships between the United States, between United States companies and local companies, depending on where you are in the world. Management officers who are responsible for running the embassy, for managing the embassy operations, right, from the budget, real estate that the embassy has to buy, has to own, has to manage. Political officers who are traditionally the ones who are communicating with local governments, all levels of foreign government officials. Know that the Foreign Service officers now in all of these tracks have to deal in some way with local governments, and so it's certainly not completely the purvey of the political officers, but that is part of it. And then public diplomacy officers, right? Those who are responsible for reaching out, changing the perception of America, altering the perception of America in the eyes of local populations in order to kind of forward America's mission. And I want to just spend a little bit of time looking at these 13 dimensions here for people that they're looking for across the Foreign Service, right? Because the idea is, yes, there are different tracks, but ultimately all of these tracks we want 13 qualities, right, from the candidates for these tracks. Note that, well, we'll go through them. Composure, cultural adaptability, experience and motivation, information integration and analysis. Right, this is really where, although it may not be a hard requirement, doing the types of projects you're involved in, the types of work you're doing now in a degree, as you pursue a degree, certainly helps you kind of display this sort of skill and to develop this sort of skill. Initiative and leadership, judgment, objectivity and integrity, oral communication, planning and organization, resourcefulness, working with others, written communication, which this especially probably, right, is going to be something that you're developing right now, even further, right, as you go on to do a degree. And then quantitative analysis, which is huge everywhere right now. Everybody wants people to be able to use data to recognize patterns and trends in data and to perform mathematical operations. So that's well worth thinking about as you complete your degree, and as you start to choose careers or continue in the career that you're in. This usually helps in all sorts of careers. So those are the Foreign Service Officer qualifications. Let's have a quick look at the selection process before I move on to something a little bit different. So you see why we started with the career track, right? That's the first step. You choose one of these career tracks. If this book will certainly help you do that, right? Even if you're not interested necessarily in really going for this, you'll get to understand a little bit more about how each of the career tracks, or certainly one of the career tracks, how it helps to perform the functions that the State Department needs it to do. There is the test, right? There's the Foreign Service Officer test that goes every so often, every few months. You've got to take that, you've got to register for it, then you've got to take it. Then you've got to submit your personal narrative, take the oral assessment, and get your medical and security clearances, and then you get the review, and then you put on the list. Okay. It says foreign languages here. Foreign languages are, they're not necessary, but they do give you an edge if you do have proficiency in a foreign language. So that's well worth looking at those things. Okay, so again, this is kind of the basis. We're gonna learn all that through our reading, and I'm going to ask you in the assignment to choose one of these tracks, right, and to talk about the kind of skills and the kind of interest that somebody in that track would have to have. Right? You can find that here, but you'll find it in the book in much more detail. And then I'm going to ask you to go back and say, okay, well, what's the mission of the Foreign Service, and how do these skills get put to use? Okay, I want to draw your attention to something else as well, right? That for those of you who might be on the fence even about this, there's a chance to try before you buy, if you like, right? Chance to try out a career as a Foreign Service Officer, and that's to be an intern. And you can choose to be an intern in Washington, D.C. or abroad. They do have Foreign Service officers. Oftentimes their first assignment is abroad, but at some point in their career they will spend time in Washington, D.C. And so as an intern applicant, you can choose where you'd like to try this out at. But you'll notice that in summer 2019 that they're now accepting applications. It is only for the next 9 days, but the idea is you'll enter duty in May or June, that sort of time frame, and you will then. The reason why we need to have a long lead up is because you've got to go through a security check and that sort of thing. You need a 3.0 GPA. You need to be able to receive either a secret or a top secret clearance. You've got to successfully complete the background investigation for that, and you might be randomly drug tested. You've got to be a student, which all of you are, right? Because you're all either enrolled. You've got to be enrolled as a degree-seeking student, which I imagine that's the vast majority of you, if not all of you. You've got to have 60 credits or more at this point, so you might well have that. Some of you will certainly have that. And there you go. They look for a broad range of academic majors. There's definitely opportunities for all of you. You get to choose which officers might be a best fit for you, and there's something here that we can look at, right? I mean, there's everything you can think of there. Let's have a look. Administration, budget and planning, consular affairs, counter-terrorism, East Asia and political affairs, right? Office of Medical Services. These are political military affairs. There's a lot of choice, right? Have a look through those if you want to try and if you would seriously consider doing an internship. The bad news is the internship is unpaid. Here we go. Look at this. Choose a major. Let's try. Let's see, global studies. There's no global studies on it. Let's see. International relations. That's close. I think that's close enough. Let's check on this. So go. So this narrows it down a little bit for you, but actually not that much, because the global studies it prepares you for a very broad range of positions, a broad range of, and obviously the whole Department of State is geared towards international relations, right, and global studies types of activities. Yeah, so there you go. I wanted to show you a little bit. So those are the options for the internship. I want to show you, we went over the qualifications already, so we don't have to do that again. Let me go back again and just make sure there was nothing else that was on my mind to point out to you. Compensation and benefits and unpaid, right, which I mentioned already. But you almost certainly through ASU could get college credit for this. Absolutely. So consider that. If you're on the fence, this will give you a good way to find out more about it. And yeah, so again, now focusing a little bit more on the assignment. This is probably repetitive, but you'll see that we're going to read the first two sections. If you look at the front, that's actually the first 7 chapters, right? And you might want to skim some of it, but what you'll do is you'll choose one of these. You can do it backwards, I suppose, right? You're going to write it backwards, but maybe you should read it forwards. But you choose one of these branches: consular affairs, public diplomacy, economic and business diplomacy, and managing foreign relations. And then what you're going to do is kind of look at this chapter 2, who are America's diplomats. Right, there's a certain image, I think, of diplomats, a certain preconception of what sort of background they might come from. But actually, in terms of things like age, as long as you're registered by the time you're 59, and as long as you're in service by the time you're 60, and you have to be over 21, I believe. Am I right on that? Check that out. Eligibility requirements. No, that's the wrong one. I was just looking at this, but I don't want to give you the wrong information. Certainly, the upper limit is 59. What's who we look for? There we go. Oh yeah, I was right. You've got to be 21 before you can actually start your service, but you can register when you're 20. So that might be relevant to some of you. So yes, you've got to be a US citizen, but there's no other real hard and fast rules about it, right? So the idea is that people from all sorts of backgrounds might be ready and might have a lot to offer in this sort of an environment. So check that out. That's in chapter 2. Who are America's diplomats? And then and again, we're trying to match the skills to the role, and then back to chapter 1, which is what's the foreign service for? What does it do? At least the minimum you're going to get out of this is you're going to know a lot more about the Foreign Office, the State Department. I'm back in Britain. The State Department than I think, well, for most of you, than you've ever known, and hopefully, in a best case scenario, this has become something that you'd like to pursue as a career, and that you're successful in that pursuit. So good luck with the assignment, happy reading, and I look forward to reading about what you think about the skills and the roles that are put to use in the Foreign Service.